Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards from the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Tactician. This is a 5-cost action and duration card from Seaside, and it says, if you have at least one card in hand, discard your hand, and at the start of your next turn, plus 5 cards, plus 1 action, and plus 1 buy. So just to clarify, you must discard at least one card in order to get the bonus next turn. So if you throne Tactician, you don't get 2 sets of bonuses under normal circumstances. You only get 1 set of 5 cards action and buy, because the second play, there were no cards in your hand in order to discard. If you don't discard any cards and get no bonus at all, then Tactician won't stay in play because it's not doing anything on your next turn. Now, it is possible to actually successfully throne Tactician if you put the plus card token on it. This is more trivia than like something that happens very often, but you know that can be a good use of your pathfinding token. You get 5 cards out of it for putting it on a Tactician instead of maybe you don't have another card you have 5 copies of. You don't necessarily want to do this. It does use up one of your throne rooms. They get stuck in play, but you know, if I don't say this, someone's going to mention it. So there you go. It is possible to throne Tactician if you're willing to expend this resource on it. So what's the general idea behind Tactician? Well, what this card is trying to say is that sometimes one big turn is going to be better than having 2 small ones. And you essentially give up your current turn in order to get like a double turn next time. Because every turn you have 5 cards, 1 action and 1 buy, and that's basically the effect that this card is giving you. Now, when you have a bigger turn, why is this better than 2 smaller ones? Well, it makes it easier to pair up cards that work really well together. So, your villages, your smithies, or your remodels and your golds, or whatever have you. It also lets you buy stronger, more expensive cards, and sometimes the big, powerful cards are going to be better than lots of smaller ones. Would you rather have 1 gold or 2 silvers? Well, a lot of times maybe you'd rather just have the gold, right? So instead of having 2 turns where you buy 3-cost cards, you have 1 turn where you buy 6. I don't know. That's sort of the theme behind this card anyway. Now, in practice, I say while you're skipping your turn, you're actually not skipping your whole turn. You're just skipping the buy and night phases. You still get to play other action cards first, so you can still launch attacks, you can still play warehouses, for example, that sort of thing. So even if you are doing the thing where you're just thinking, I'm going to discard my turn, buy nothing, and then have a double turn next time, you're not actually skipping a full turn, so you can get extra benefit that way out of Tactician. Now, even when I say you skip your buy phase, that's actually a lie. In reality, you're not skipping your buy phase. You usually just have no money to spend, and that's because when you discard your hand, you don't get to play any of your treasures, right? Because you have to play Tactician during your action phase before your buy phase. However, treasures aren't the only way to actually earn money. You also have certain action cards like Conspirator, for example, that can earn you money. And so if you can play action cards that generate you money, you still get to buy something during your buy phase, even after you've discarded your entire hand from a Tactician. So Tactician gets a lot stronger when you have forms of action money, basically, or disappearing money, that sort of thing that we've talked about before. Some people call it like virtual coin, but basically action cards that give you money. Of course, there are also ways in which you still get to play treasures anyway, and that is because there are cards that allow you to basically either play treasures during your action phase, or they allow you to return to your action phase from your buy phase, or they allow you to play action cards during your buy phase. So here are some examples. Black Market is the classic. You play it and then you get to play any number of treasures from your hand. So you play all your treasures first, and then after Black Market you play your Tactician. Villa and Cavalry, you buy them, you return back to your action phase, so you get to play all your treasures, buy a Cavalry it draws you 2 cards and you're back in your action phase, and then you play your Tactician. And now you've got all of the money from those treasures, so you get to buy good things with them. And there's Toil, an event from Menagerie, where for spending 2 money, you get to play an action card from your hand. Well, if you just have 1 buy left over, in fact, you don't even need a buy left over. You just play your treasures and then you play Toil first. It gives you the buyback, and for the cost of 2 coins, you got to play your Tactician and also play all your treasures, right? Fantastic. So there are ways to get around this limitation with Tactician. There might actually be more than this. These are just like the classic examples. There is a special case that I did want to call out. It's very unusual and hard to spot, and you don't see it all that often, but I think it's interesting enough to be worthy of mention, and that is Scepter. Scepter allows you to replay action cards that you played this turn, but the problem is that you can't play Scepter after playing Tactician normally, right? If it was still played this turn and in play. But if you have a way, then you get to actually play the Tactician and put it in play without doing the whole discarding your hand thing, and then you get to do that with Scepter later on after you've played all of your treasures. And it doesn't work with every way. Some of them, like Way of the Horse, take Tactician out of play, but if it leaves Tactician in play, then, by all means, play Tactician with it and then Scepter it later. I know this is like a 3-card combo, but because there are multiple ways that work, it's a lot more likely than like a typical 3-card combo, which is very unlikely to show up anyway. So that's why I brought this up as a mention. It'll happen a little bit more often than other like 3-card combos. So, if you've done any of these things, either getting your money from action cards or using some of these special combos that let you play your treasures first, you unlock something that we call the double Tactician strategy. And this is probably the strongest use case for Tactician. Most of the time when I'm playing Tactician, I'm looking for double Tactician. This is the reason why I do it, 'cause it's very good. And it's a very unique type of deck, this whole thing where you usually can't play any treasures. So double Tactician, it's called that because you typically have 2 copies of Tactician, and your aim is that you're going to play one every turn. And so you still use your buy phases as normal because you're still able to generate money whilst playing Tactician every turn. And then, of course, you get all the benefits from Tactician every single turn. So it is giving you that 10-card hand and that extra action and every buy. And as you can hopefully guess by now, starting every turn with a 10-card hand and like a free village effect is really strong, right? It is very hard to dud in a situation where you have a starting hand like that. And you can still play a deck as normal, right? You still get to play other draw cards and villages and so on. You're just trying to make sure that you always end with a Tactician as your last action every turn. And you can still use the whole treasure-based playing treasures with double Tactician if you've got one of those enablers that we mentioned before. One thing you can't do with double Tactician, though, is that there's no way to effectively use night cards, because they are always going to be discarded before the night phase. There's just no way to use them with double Tactician. Another thing you need to watch out for with double Tactician, if you ever miss playing a Tactician, this can be a huge disaster, because it takes a while to get set back up again. Not only do you have a bad starting hand next turn, but you have to find a Tactician and basically kill a turn to get back to where you are drawing the 10-card hands again. It can be very, very painful indeed. So you're going to be looking for things that give you a lot of reliability, like warehouses and so on, cellars, that sort of thing, if you want to do double Tactician. But double Tactician is very good if you ever see it. Get 2 Tacticians, play it every turn, use most of the time action cards for money, and you just get mega turns every turn. It's great. Some cards particularly benefit from just having these massive starting hands. There's a bunch of examples, but I've listed some here, like Vault. Vault is interesting because you can play Vault. You don't actually need anything else other than Tactician Vault. So you have your big starting hand, it's got a Vault in it. You play Vault, you discard exactly 8 cards, and then you have 2 left in hand, and you buy a province and you play like your other Tactician, because you got 2 actions, and that's it. And of course this is reliant on you finding the Vault and the other Tactician every turn, and you need to actually have enough cards to discard with Vault. But at that point, you don't need anything else, and you basically just get one province every turn. Like, is that good enough? Maybe you can do better, but Vault is a special case. Artificer wants really big hands to discard cards from, and then you get to gain a card and top deck it. So it's really good. Sometimes Artificer struggles with getting to the situation where you have big hands, but if you can start with really big hands straight away, then that's fantastic for Artificer. Crossroads wants you to draw a lot of victory cards so that it can draw really well, and ideally you want that as soon as possible. So just having a 10-card starting hand makes Crossroads very, very good. Right, so these are just some examples of where just starting with massive hands just gets certain cards to work extremely well. Okay, so that's enough about double Tactician. What about Tactician when we can't use double Tactician? So let's say there's no way to effectively get money from action cards. Well, what you can do then is you can play what we call single Tactician, and it's only named that way to differentiate it from double Tactician. You could still have multiple Tacticians in your deck, but it basically means that you're doing the whole thing where you are planning to skip an entire turn. That's sort of the aim here, right? You play it, you discard your whole hand, you're not buying anything that go, and then you hope to have a really big turn. So typically you would do this when you're not necessarily planning to Tactician every other turn. You might have a very poor deck, like there's junking and there's no trashing, and you're just not doing very much on all of your turns, right? You can't hit good price points. Maybe it's militia money, right? Like where you're just discarding down to a crap hand anyway. Like you just have really bad turns consistently all the time, and like you can't get an engine going and draw. So here, having the really big hand is going to be helpful because it might be the only way that you're like getting up to province. And if you just manage to snipe a couple of provinces now and then you're well on your way to winning because it's so difficult to get there otherwise. This also might allow you, when decks are not very good, to use cards that benefit being paired up with others when you have like no other effective draw. So it might be that you bought Baron early and you opened with it, and then it starts to become quite difficult later on to pair it with Estates. But if you have a Tactician, then it's actually a lot easier to do that, so Baron continues to be a bit useful. Or it might be that Remodel, normally if you've got not got any draw, you might buy it early to get rid of some estates, and then it will really struggle to actually like pair it up with golds or whatever to turn them into provinces. But if you have the occasional big turn, it might actually be quite easy to do that. So you get more value from cards like this if you go single Tactician, right? But the key one here is that the turns need to usually not be so like consistently great. You're looking to have turns that most of the time you would expect to be pretty rubbish, right? It's just the presence of Tactician also lets you go towards using more engine-y cards in that kind of deck by having these occasional good turns. Mission from Adventures needs to be called out specifically. Tactician is a pure prime example of a card that works very well with Mission. So Mission gives you an extra turn, but you're not allowed to buy any cards. Well, you weren't buying any cards anyway on the turn you played Tactician. So if you have a way to guarantee finding your Tactician on your Mission turn, or even just a really good chance, then it could be very good to just buy a Mission on your normal turns. So here, like if you could top deck it at the end of your turn with like an Artisan or a Courtyard, you buy Mission and other things, and then your Mission turn starts and you just immediately play Tactician. Well, that means that every regular turn where you're allowed to actually buy cards, you get to have big Tactician turns, right, which will make them very strong. So that's pretty good. Like sometimes Mission is looking for action cards that are really good on their own, like in the absence of you actually doing much else on your turn, and hey, Tactician is great for this. Last but not least, I need to mention a specific watch out for cards that will force you to play action cards when you don't want them to. Like if you are trying to do a Herald deck and you add in Tactician, and your Herald finds Tactician, well, that is the end of your action phase suddenly. In fact, your entire turn, like, whoop, your whole hand just gets discarded, bang, it's over. Do not buy these cards when Tactician is around. Golem is another one. You may have historically heard people say, oh, Golem can be a combo with Tactician, because if you find it and like a Smithy, you discard your hand and then you play the Smithy, and hey, look, your turn keeps going. Maybe you can play multiple tacticians, but this is very impractical and I really wouldn't recommend it. Like, if you hear someone trying to give you that advice, it is hugely outdated. Do not try to play Golem Tactician. It just doesn't work. So that's all that I really have for Tactician. So what we are going to do now is we are going to head over to the online client and we are going to generate some kingdoms that have Tactician in it. And let's see how good Tactician is on these kingdoms. Here, the only village is, well, Tactician to some extent, but not really. Diplomat as well. Is there a consistent way to kick off diplomats? Only with, well, I was going to say Cellar and Haven, but Haven sometimes does and sometimes doesn't, so that doesn't really work. Diplomat, is there a good attack? Well, there's no trashing and there's cut purse. So maybe cut purse is very good here, and that means that actually Diplomat is decent as a response, because we also get to use it as a village one time if it's in hand with Diplomat. And, you know, we might be able to discard our coppers and cut purse doesn't hurt us. But in practice, what are we actually doing here? There's a lot of cards that we can workshop, but do we even want to? Is this just Smithy big money? Is it cut purse big money? Like, is that actually better than Smithy big money? Tactician might actually be okay here because there's no real engine. So this is a single Tactician. It's definitely not a double Tactician board. Like, there's no village and the only way to earn money otherwise is cut purse. But I can see this being a single Tactician game. You wouldn't really use Outpost, and you're just hoping to have these big turns occasionally. So maybe it is you start with cut purse. I don't know how much I like workshop here, just thinking about it. I think it might be quite poor. I don't know if I actually want a bunch of Wishing Wells. And well, there is Wishing Well Secret Passage, thinking about it. Actually, that's a neat combo. Maybe this is I get a workshop. So I might open with workshop, thinking about it, because I don't care to hit 5. And I can gain some Secret Passages, Wishing Wells. I don't know if that's a good long-term strategy, but it is a thing I can do. And I can guarantee that the Wishing Wells, like when I get enough of them, the Wishing Wells are laboratories. But do I just want a really slow way to gain laboratories across the game? And just very slowly gain coppers, silvers, golds, and buy a single province per turn? It doesn't actually feel very good. And if I'm doing that, I'm probably not single Tacticianing either. Like, it feels like this board's going to be slow no matter what, because there's also cut purse. So maybe I open workshop and Secret Passage, really? Or is it more Wishing Well? Or is it just cut purse and I hope they don't collide? I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe it's workshop and Wishing Well, and I'm going to be workshopping Secret Passages and I'm going to be buying Wishing Wells, and then soon I'm just trying to get a way to quite poorly draw my deck. I don't know, it feels very slow. But I want to be playing the workshop, so I don't really have room for cut purse, and I'm certainly not using Diplomat on this kind of deck, so there's always Cellar to activate Diplomat, but it feels bad as well. But would it be nice to use cut purse? I'm just thinking maybe you have Cellar, Diplomat, Workshop, and cut purse. Maybe those are the things, and you hope you have Cellar or Diplomat in your starting hand. Maybe, and you can get the village effect to play both of these, but it feels terrible. The alternative is that it's just Smithy Big Money, and honestly, that might compete here. So it's going to be one of these, or it's like Smithy Big Money. I guess I'm not really using Tactician here. It doesn't feel very good. So I think whichever of those weak strategies we go for, like, they sort of don't really synergize well with Tactician, so we'll just ignore Tactician on that board, I think. Here we have Masquerade and Trading Post and Salvager to trash. We have Bazaar and Mining Village as villages. We have Patrol and Smithy as draw. So there's just like a basic village and terminal draw engine going on here with some trashing. We do have Conspirator as a form of money, and also Bazaar. So we could double Tactician here. And looking at it, the only source of plus buy are Salvager, which is not great, and Tactician, which is great. So I think double Tactician will be really good here because we actually want 2 buys per turn, and Tactician is the only reasonable way that we are getting it. There is Salvager, but it can be tricky to actually effectively use it. So I would really like to double Tactician on this board. We've got cards that let us do it, and with the extra buy from Tactician, we can buy a lot of Conspirators. But first we need to set up a deck filled with Bazaars, and Conspirators. There's also Mining Village that gives you money, and Salvager as well. Actually, there's a whole bunch of ways to gain money, with your double Tactician. So this looks like a very good double Tactician board. How would we start it? I think I'm almost certainly opening Masquerade. I don't think we bother with Trading Post. We don't want silvers in a double Tactician deck. So we're going to get thin with Masquerade. I don't know if we bother with Salvager. Maybe it's just Masquerade. So I'm going to get Masquerade, and I think I will have our silver. And for a while it'll just be a card that I discard with Tactician, maybe. Maybe eventually I pick up a Salvager and I can smash the silver away. But yeah, so I'm going to open Masquerade silver. I'm going to look to get a couple of Bazaars and Conspirators before I start double Tacticianing. Right, you do need to have the money in coin, action money, before you start double Tacticianing, so I do need to get these cards. And, I can get Smithies or Patrols. Maybe I'm always getting a Bazaar on 5, and I might get a Smithy at one point on 4, but otherwise I would just want to start going for Conspirators straight away, maybe. It's very important how many Conspirators and Bazaars I get, because those are going to be most of the money, and that puts a dampener on how well double Tactician can do. But I don't really need Smithy that much when I eventually start doing double Tactician. I've already got a Masquerade for some draw, so this is a double Tactician board anyway. I'm fairly clear about that. Double Tactician seems very key on this board. It seems very good. You really want the plus buy, actually. Getting that extra buy per turn is very good there. Here we have Chapel to get thin very fast. We have Fishing Village as a very good village. There is also Diplomat. There is also Throne Room. And, well, there's Shantytown as well. What's the draw? It's only Shantytown, or it's a Tactician. So the big problem is that the only forms of action money are Fishing Village, Navigator, and Poacher. Those are not very good. Now, because we have, you could do Fishing Village, Navigator, and go into double Tactician, right? That will actually work here. Tactician is effectively... It's not the only draw. There is Diplomat as well. But double Tactician seems like it might be good. The alternative is that we try and get some draw engine going that's using Courtier to gain golds, and I wonder if that's better. So we have Throne Room on Diplomat, we have Fishing Village, so sometimes we get to we have Fishing Villages and Diplomats in our starting hand, and we get to play Diplomat for actions as well. There's also Throne Room on Diplomat that makes it work for actions. We can actually play quite a lot of Diplomats here, and there is Courtier giving us buy as well. And there's lots of things. There's Diplomats, there's Fishing Villages, there's Tacticians as a way to get multiple effects from Courtier, so we can gain money and buy. Right, Courtier is also a form of action money as well. In fact, it's a pretty good one, because you can use action and coin. In fact, if we go double Tactician, we can reveal the other Tactician with Courtier, get action coin if we need it, we can throne it, we can get buy and coin. I'm thinking, actually, it's too slow to get a bunch of Fishing Villages and Diplomats. I like double Tactician using Throne Room and Courtiers, and we will have some Fishing Villages. Maybe we have some Navigators that we throne as well, but I would much rather have Courtiers if I can. Maybe I'm just getting Throne Rooms on 4, but I'm certainly opening Chapel, and I'm probably going to have a Fishing Village or 2, so maybe I go Chapel. Well, maybe it's just Poacher, right? Maybe I go Chapel Poacher. I don't actually care that much about Fishing Village, thinking about it, because I've got Throne Room and Courtier, and Poacher seems much better. But these 2 in particular, these 3 are the cards that I want, and Chapel, right? These are the main important cards here, and we can get a lot of money throning Courtiers with big hands, with Tactician. Each pair of them, each of them are giving us 3 coins, and we have a 10-card hand, and we're getting our buys as well, and occasional actions. With Throne Courtier, we take money action and money buy, like with it, and it's revealing Tactician. Like just a hand of those is giving us a load of money for provinces. So I think, yeah, these three here are the key cards. I will get a single poacher, like it's fine with my chapel, just because it's a cantrip coin is why I'm starting with that. I will probably have a silver at some point, or maybe I just buy a number of poachers. Maybe a navigator over a silver just because it's action money, right? Like maybe I just never buy a silver. I wonder if I actually am doing that. Maybe I am. And I'm clawing my way up to getting courtier and throne rooms, and then I'm going double tactician. So this is another double tactician deck. It feels pretty good. The other draw is fairly weak, and it's too hard to get lots of copies of it, compared to like the big powerhouse that is double tactician, that just suddenly you have these excellent turns that kick off. So double tactician board, very powerful here, it looks to me. We got there in the end. What's happening here? We have Conspirator again, the classic action money for Tactician. But we do have a village, there is nobles. So we got Chapel to thin, that's very important. There is a replace, interestingly. How good is that? So the thing is that Courtier can gain you golds, and you also have replace to turn those golds into provinces, right? You don't actually have to play golds if you're doing a double tactician deck. This might be another double tactician deck. So we chapel down, we get silver with it as well. Seems better than pawn. And we will eventually start buying some nobles. We have these double tacticians turn. We use nobles or warehouses or pawns even to like kick off conspirator chains. And then we use like courtier and replace as more payload. We could actually potentially gain a gold, draw it with a conspirator, replace it into a province, give our opponent a curse, and like then like do a double tactician. So I think this is another double tactician. The village is expensive, but we don't need the village that much. In fact, maybe we don't need a village at all. Like, what are the only terminals we're playing? One replace and a tactician. Maybe we don't care for nobles. I would like to have some because it would be nice to get some extra draw, and in a way that, you know, 2 nobles, 1 for village, 1 for draw. Now I can use my conspirators. Seems quite nice, but there are other ways to kick off conspirator as well, so that's not a huge worry. But yeah, like all of these cards on the top row look real nice, and these cards down here are not so great except for Chapel, but really I want a load of these. And I think we could do double tactician again. It seems, again, very good as a way to get a lot of draw. Nobles is quite expensive way to get draw, and so yeah, like I will have a thin deck with no treasures in it, thanks to Chapel, which is a great time to use double tactician. So this is another double tactician board, and it looks like a very good one. So Tactician has been doing really well in these kingdoms so far. Like, double Tactician has come up quite a lot here. It's very strong when it does. Here we have Chapel again. We also have Lookout for trashing. There is a remodel too. We've got Festival Library as a potential deck. We have Wharf, which is very good, and it has Festival. We have Wharf and Double Tactician using Festival as money as well. There's even Merchant Ship as a form of money. So Festival and Merchant Ship, these are action for money, which means that we can do a Double Tactician. And we got Outpost, right? It's great to have your Outpost turn start with the +5 cards from Tactician. There is also Wharf as well. So like there are hugely powerful draw cards. Festival is exceptionally important in this kingdom. There is Shantytown if we need another village, but man, you really want Festival. Like everything that it is doing, the action form of money. There's also like Library if you want it, but I don't think Library is anywhere nearly as good as like Double Tactician in this case. But I need a lot of Festivals as quickly as I can. What's the best way to do that? So we definitely want to Chapel down. We are opening Silver and Chapel, even better if we can get a 5-2 and we get Festival Chapel that we certainly start with. And then once we have like 3 festivals, I think... How do we start this? Maybe we just go for Wharf before Tactician and we get more festivals, or maybe it's Outpost. Maybe we Chapel down. Once we have 3 festivals, we get an Outpost, and we're just going to try and have... No, we need some draw first. we get a wharf and then we get an outpost, and then we try and like use the outpost to gain more festivals, maybe. Like, but we really want to win the festival split, and then we start building from there. Like, it's okay to not have draw. Like, we just got to get the festivals, and I think whoever gets the most festivals wins, because they can then start using like merchant ships for extra money if they need it, and then they just go to town provincing, and you've got these really powerful duration draw cards, and you can double Tactician. And we just ignore treasures here completely. So, yeah, so this is another double Tactician. Was that like 4 double Tactician kingdoms that showed up in this analysis? It might have been. Double Tactician's really good when you can do it. Yeah, so I think we used or thought about considering using Tactician on all of those kingdoms. Maybe, no, we didn't on the first one, which there was no engine and there was just better stuff. But yeah, like, if you have a way to avoid treasures in a game, then double Tactician is just a very good way of doing that. It's a very strong use case for Tactician, and we just had a load of examples where you would use it. We didn't really have any good single Tactician boards, I don't think, but oh well, you know, that's random kingdom analysis for you. Anyway, yeah, Tactician, it's a decent card. I would say it's pretty niche, but actually there are a bunch of ways that you can earn money through action cards that do show up. And there are plenty of cards that give you good trashing, like especially all these games with Chapel that showed up, like very good for double Tactician. Anyway, yeah, Tactician is a good card. I hope this video was useful for you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.